Welcome to Business is Personal. I'm Corey Block. I'm your host again, and thanks for joining us on the podcast. I have a couple of amazing guests with me today. This is Asma and Marco, and before they introduce themselves, I just want to tell you what we're talking about. It's such an exciting topic. Today we're talking about CEO leadership and what makes an exceptional CEO, and specifically in the UAE market. So, would you mind please just introduce yourselves, take a minute?
Absolutely. Asma. And I am advisor at Duval Union Consulting, where we are helping companies to future-proof their businesses. I'm as well managing Linux Consulting, where I work with disruptive tech entrepreneurs and owning an organic skincare brand, The Precious Drop. Super excited to be here, really.
Very exciting to have you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a great opportunity to discuss this topic. My name is Marco Blankenberg. I'm from the International Director of KnowledgeWorks. And we are focused on consulting, change management and leadership development, and we have the privilege of doing that all over the world. So I'm very excited to be discussing this
Great
topic.
to have you, great. I've done some work with KnowledgeWorks before in the past, and it was amazing quality stuff. By the way, you should definitely seek these guys out. I've worked with a lot of different CEOs here in the UAE, all over the world actually, but here specifically in the UAE, we have a number of particular challenges that CEOs face in their leadership. And there's a lot of things that I would say separate nominal from exceptional CEO leadership in this market. What are the things that you would say are the biggest challenges that CEOs face here? Asma?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I mean, you are completely right. You know, we just cannot put this discussion in a worldwide context. But if we really focus on UAE and the region, our region is having its own challenges, its own problem to tackle. And once you are a CEO and have the privilege to lead people, company, you know, we are putting all of this in the context of the UAE. So to go directly to the subject, I really believe that one of the challenges that the CEO are having in the UAE are nothing more than the challenges that any CEO can have when the business, the industries are transforming. The world is transforming super fast. There are a lot of digital, you know, disruption. And the CEOs and the companies here are really starting to really understand that to keep on having a competitive advantage, serve their customer and acquire a new one, they need to deal and stay ahead of the curve and respond well to disruption. So the challenge will be here is how quickly our CEO in the UAE put in place this context and answer to disruption.
Wow, very good. Marco, what do you think?
Yeah, beyond that, I think there's major challenges just because of the nature of the region that are unique. And I look at two sides to that situation. So on the one hand, you have amazing examples of local brands that are going global, which is in and of itself its own unique challenge to lead those types of organizations.
Sure.
And then you have an influx of large global brands that see Dubai as a hub and see the UAE as a hub. And as a result of that, you can't copy and paste the leadership that they had back home into the UAE context, and that comes with its own challenges.
Sure. So the culture is definitely a big piece of the puzzle here. Because we have a lot of family-owned companies, we have a lot of local ownership and expat CEOs, and that comes with its own communication issues. I think for me, the biggest issues that I see CEOs, or that I hear CEOs facing are, one is talent retention. They just can't seem to retain talent. Like it is all over the world, the average tenure now seems to be about 4 years for people in my generation, and for millennials it's like 2.5 years. That's the average tenure. So they're having to onboard and offboard really exceptional talent very quickly and in short periods of time. And so that's very frustrating, is to try and maintain stability in the organization for a CEO, to try to get enough talent to maintain that kind of stability. And the other thing is information quality. That's a huge challenge for all of the CEOs that I've talked to in the last few years, especially here in the UAE. There's so much information, so much information. You know, you have the informal networks within the organization, you have your formal networks outside of the organization, you have your past experiences and your past networks that you're dealing with, then you have the board and their bits of information, then you have media, and there's just a tremendous amount of media. And so it's very difficult for CEOs to sift through the volume of available information to find out what it is that they actually need.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my second question for you guys. How does a CEO determine what kinds of inputs they need or what insights they need in order to get a really good perspective on their business? Here in the UAE specifically, where do CEOs go for input? Where do we go for insight?
Can I take one step back from that?
Sure.
Because there's another major issue that is linked to that, and that is that when I talk to the average CEO, and myself as well, it is so easy to just fill your calendar chock-a-block with stuff that needs to get done. So finding the right information is one thing, but carving out time to think, to process. So once you have that information, most CEOs don't spend time reflecting, studying market trends, studying competitions, studying opportunities, etc.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That in and of itself, you know, Covey talks about quadrant 1 time and quadrant 2 time, and most CEOs I talk to, quadrant 2 time is very, very limited.
Okay, so what is the practical advice that you give to a CEO in terms of how to carve out their time?
I always start with, do you have your secretary or do you block time away?
Yeah.
And is that coming into the office really early when nobody's there, where you know you won't be distracted, or is it a late evening where you just, you know, step away from things, where you either study, reflect, you know, look at opportunities or challenges you might be facing, and make that a discipline is the first thing. Before you start deciding what to collect and what to do with it. Yeah.
I can't agree more. And really, to your point, we are seeing here in the region and in the UAE different type of companies. Exactly as you said, we are having, you know, local groomed company with their own brands, etc. And you are having as well conglomerates and international companies who are coming and who have penetrated the market for a long time and who are coming as well with their own style leadership, their own global strategy. And the CEOs here are having the challenge, or at least the responsibility, to fine-tune this strategy, because you just cannot take what is working, for example, in Europe, France, US, and think that you can leverage this and be ahead of the curve by copy-pasting this strategy. So the CEOs here are finding their own way, their own strategies, customizing it to the real need of the market, to the real need of the customer, with all the challenges that we are having. So this is absolutely one of the things. The second one are companies who are, you know, more being the kind of middleman with different brands abroad. And what is happening here, because we are in a digital world, those companies are being bypassed. So why a company who is having brands internationally will still pass and go through this middleman who have been amazing and doing amazing job, where everything can be done digitally. So there is this, and then we are having the homegrown brands, companies, you know, who have been thriving by setting up their own line of products, services, etc. And here the challenge is different. It's really about having this competitive advantage, again, understanding disruption, and yes, taking the time really to step back and think about what needs to be done, and then execute quickly, pivot or change, and move fast.
Okay, so I want to make this practical again for our CEOs out there. We have CEOs actually watching this podcast, and I want them to have a practical tool that they can take away from this discussion. So when we talk about the discipline of thinking, you know, there's so much input, there's so much media, and there's so many different sources of information, sources of knowledge that a CEO can go to, and that they're just being bombarded with. We need to be able to sort through all of the available information for meaningful information. The other thing is to develop, like you said, Marco, the discipline of taking time to actually sort through it, right? So Warren Buffett, for example, says he spends about 80% of his day reading, which I believe. That's number one, is to try to find time to read or to get the information, and number two is to decide what you're reading, right? What kind of information is going to be valuable to you in the UAE as a CEO? So those are my next two questions, is how do you advise CEOs to carve out time? Let's start there. How do you get that discipline in place?
Yeah, if I may, absolutely. There is time to reflect, but as well, when it comes to CEO and the source of information, we have to be really mindful of what we read and which kind of data as well we use, because everyone is having opinions. There are amazing books that probably we can leverage. There are shortcuts to success, and it's about leveraging as well the experiences of other amazing CEOs, etc., who are having this kind of knowledge. But there is one thing I believe in, is data, because we can interpret things our own way, but data don't lie and doesn't lie. So CEOs can just go literally to bank of data. It's online, it's free. Take up the information actually and this kind of data, treat them and see what they can do out of it. It's getting this insight. So the insight can be found in data that they can interpret. There can be found as well, as you said, in the latest trend that are trustworthy. They can be leveraged from books. Once you get all of that, then again, you step back, you reflect, and see how this relates to what are you doing as a CEO in your company.
Yeah. Marco?
Well, I think there's a number of layers to it for a CEO, and maybe start with the layer of who am I as a leader. So I always encourage people, what are you reading to develop yourself?
Yeah.
How are you investing time in developing yourself? Are you aware of, let's say, the latest developments in neuroscience?
Yeah.
That to me is a hot topic right now.
Yeah,
because
sure.
it explains how I think, how I'm wired, how that is projected onto other people, my leadership style. So that's one layer. Are you developing yourself? Are you reading? Are you studying?
Yeah.
The second thing for me is are you listening to your organization? And are you gathering the data needed to understand your organization? And another layer is the market itself. So either the regional market and then the global market. And when it comes to global market, I think it's really important for a leader to study the global trends.
Sure.
Unfortunately, resources like some of the big business schools do excellent research. Big five firms, the larger firms do fantastic research as well.
Sure.
So I always push people into do you know the mega trends?
Yeah. And
how does that translate into what you do with your leadership team and with the strategic direction of your organization? Yeah,
sure. Now, for me, practically speaking, I do my thinking in the morning. And I do spend a lot of time gathering input, but I know when I think well. I think well in the morning. So for me, like between 7 and 9 usually, or between 7 and 11, I'll do my study. That's my academic time. So I think it's important for leaders to know when they do their best thinking, and also to be able to just to turn this off.
Yes.
This is the most horrible thing, because it's addictive, right? I mean, we've all learned a little bit about it. Every time it goes beep, every time you get a little message, it doesn't matter what the content of the message is, you get a hit of dopamine from the fact that somebody liked your video. And so we're addicted to these little things because we actually get an addictive substance released inside our brain. You mentioned neurochemicals, neurosciences. What we need to do is we need to take that same dopamine hit and we need to kill this source of it, so that this isn't the source of it, just for a few hours, right? We kill this source, turn it off, give it to your secretary, get rid of it, and then switch the dopamine hit to something else. You also get a dopamine hit from accomplishing something that you set out to do, or for learning something that you can immediately apply. So in those two things, if you put down like a small checklist, I'm going to read this blog, specifically this industry insight blog. I'm going to follow this person on LinkedIn and read whatever they write. And I'm going to go to this website and learn something, right? So if you make a little list and you check yourself off of those lists, you'll get the same hit of dopamine as you would have gotten from your mobile phone. You don't need it. Okay? The other thing is, when you're learning something, whether it's from a book or from a newspaper or from a blog or from an industry insight website, whenever you learn a new piece of information, that gives you a knowledge edge over your organization, over your competition, then you get that hit of dopamine, right? We're people after all, so let's hack our own brains and figure out how to lead ourselves.
And I would add to that, I've used software to make sure that I record it. So I continuously record snippets of what I read, what I learn.
Yeah. What do you use?
I use OneNote.
OneNote.
Our
yes.
company set up on Office 365,
Yep.
so it's there.
Yeah.
I have 12 years of history on OneNote.
That's amazing.
And I can refer back to it because there's so many things that we're bombarded with every day. You know, if we have a phrase that we use, if you think it, ink it.
Yeah, sure.
Either digitally or in audio or in written format.
Yeah.
But get yourself a system so you don't lose those nuggets.
Yeah, so there's your tip. Put your phone down, get your dopamine hit from pieces of information that you collect, and put it on OneNote. I also use OneNote. It's amazing. Do you use it?
No, I use something else, but which is completely fine. But yeah, read books.
Yeah.
And there is one book actually that I love from Ray Dalio.
Okay.
It's called Principles. And this guy, who is the CEO, chairman of one of the biggest and most performing hedge fund in the world, basically wrote this kind of principle, basically that rules his own way of working. How to work with his employees, how to build this kind of metrics based on the reliability of his employees. So there is the inside out work, and then how to tackle the market and literally automate some things, and as well be open. I really recommend our CEOs here to go through it. And as you said, just find the best way, the best channel for for yourself to learn. I personally use a lot of audiobooks. There is no half an hour, for example, driving where I don't put my audiobooks because etc. And for me, I am more, for example, performant at night. So I have almost, the whole day where I can process the information, do stuff, and the night, this is where I am at least kind of doing something completely special based on the data, based on the reading, based on the market.
That's good. Yeah, I also use Amazon Audible.
Yeah.
I'm listening to Simply Management by Henry Mintzberg right now. Love it. I've read everything that Henry Mintzberg has ever written. So I love audiobooks too. Great also tip. Use your driving time.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to add one more thing that I think is really important in the region. The whole region is still passing a lot of legislation. So keeping an eye on what is being passed and what are the consequences of that new legislation. What is playing in the market, both between the countries in the region as well as in the UAE. And it's not always good enough to just focus on what's being said in the newspapers. So you have to go behind the news, and I've collected my own sources of people that are willing to share more intimate information. And as a CEO, I think you need to find those. Find those sources that are saying more than the basic message in the newspapers. Because it has a huge impact on your strategy and your tactical implementation.
There's a huge number of CEOs in the UAE that don't understand the implications of the 2015 companies law. There's a huge number of CEOs that don't really understand the implications of VAT. And don't know how to bring their companies up to speed. So they were just caught, they were just caught by this huge wave. And when I think about what CEOs are dealing with in this region, especially in this market, it's easy for us to come up with maybe a hit list of skills and abilities that CEOs need here, maybe more than anywhere else. So that leads me to my next question: is what do you think? In terms of skills and abilities, capacities, what do you think CEOs are lacking here in the UAE that they really, really need to develop? Where can we add value to CEOs?
That's a tough one. One of the people that I work with, he did a PhD on global leadership recently, and he found that globally there's a lot of voices saying, as a global leader, which I would say most CEOs in the UAE would be considered global leaders. You need to know this, and you need to have this competency and this skill. He documented over 160 recommended competencies and skills that global CEOs need to have from many sources across the world. So it's probably one of the most discussed topics in leadership at the moment. How to be a global CEO, how to deal with the complexity of our world. And we've tried to distill it down to a simpler grid.
Yeah.
So what I say to myself, and I've challenged myself with this, is how skillful am I at perceiving the world around me? So how do I look at this conversation, me in this conversation? Am I mindful of what's really happening here between us? Can I read between the lines? Which leads to the second one. How good am I at self-managing?
Yeah, good.
In front of a group of colleagues in the boardroom, but off the field as well, you know?
Yeah, sure.
In sports, they always say, you know, performance off the field, performance off the field.
Yeah.
That's so true for CEOs today.
Yeah, that's right.
So my self-management, and then the third one is about relationship management. And most CEOs might have that skill maybe within the company, but I believe the bigger win is strategic networking.
Yeah, sure.
The relationship management outside. So increase your presence, perception management, self-management on and off the field, and relationship management. I think those are, for me, always the rally points when I discuss this with CEOs.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and you know, personally, what I think can be super helpful to our CEOs is exactly first understanding the context, the legal framework in the UAE, in the region. Absolutely, be super aware. Talk to industry leaders, even in the industry where you are not operating in, because this is where you know, the intersection of industry can give tremendous insight, even for the CEO to consider new paths, new bold moves, fine-tune their own strategy, but as well, you know, not be stuck and not be complacent, because that's the thing here. We are having amazing company who have been doing great for such a long time. So the trap is to be in this complacent mode and thinking that things will still go well. Well, no, if you do not act on it, you may be disrupted, really. The second, for me, skill a CEO needs is the agility. Himself, the agility of his team, how quickly he can react, listen, implement, and dare to fail, dare to go into, you know, uncomfortable places and be in the forefront. You know, it's not about a CEO coming and you know, talking when everything goes well. It's as well having the strength, being brave enough, where you can say things are not going okay, but here is what we are doing. And there is one example, the CEO, for example, of Shaloub Group. I don't know if you followed what he's been doing. Amazing. Really, like, this is the guy who came in front of the camera and he wrote it, etc., and said the industry is changing. It's not about crisis, it's that the world is changing, UAE is changing, etc. We are struggling to find our new balance, and this is what we are doing. We went into a kind of, I don't like the way restructuring, but more, you know, transforming the way we are working, upgrading our company, understanding the trends, understanding the legal framework, and going into a transformation in a digital world. Really, this is super important, and being fast. For me, those are and just being an excellent human being. You know, you can't you know, when you talk about leadership, you can augment or amplify everything you are. So once you are an amazing human being who is really moved by purpose and driven by bringing value, tremendous value to your customer, to your market, to the community where you are living in, then we can talk about leadership. Then we can augment and really find ways for our CEOs to impact their, you know, the market, literally. So this is what I believe can help.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. As leaders in your own organizations, have you faced, or are you facing now? I mean, we're all operating here in the UAE too, facing the challenges that are in the market now, globally and regionally. How do you, as leaders, overcome these things? How do you face them? What are the tools that you're using?
I think it's the biggest challenge in this market is that things move so fast. And we are serving organizations and leaders. So we need to be even ahead in understanding what they're facing or what they might face.
That's right.
And that's probably our biggest challenge. So I honestly can say I don't always get it right, or I might say, this is now a way that we can come alongside CEOs and this will work.
Sure.
Next thing, things have changed again
Yeah,
and
sure.
evolved, and you need to go back to the drawing board and say, that's not exactly 100% on
Yeah,
time.
sure.
So that agility of studying, learning, predicting what's going to happen next, and then using that to develop skills, competencies. Probably that's our biggest challenge as a team.
Yeah, good.
Amazing. Yeah, for me, I agree with you. Actually, it's probably not the challenge, but the opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, when you come, I'm in an advisory role, so
Yeah.
I advise big companies on, you know, how to transform, how to, you know, go from good to great, etc. So it is a responsibility. You have to come with this intellectual honesty and bring value to these people. You just cannot come and say bad cop, you know, be the bad cop. It's not working, etc. So what does it take from us? As advisor or as you know, co-creator of the future of this company, it takes a lot of work. It takes humility. It takes us as well going and doing our homework.
Yeah, sure.
It takes exactly what you said: reading, documenting, understanding the trend, and really coming, you know, with not only a helping hand, but really as a student, and as well knowledgeable.
Yeah, sure.
So it takes that. The second one, where my involvement, for example, with tech startups, who I really believe are the new force of change in the UAE, literally. Once I work with them, the challenge, you know, is again to convince them that, you know, you are here to stretch the collective mind, and exactly you are, you know, you don't come with the conviction that this gonna work, but one thing is sure is you come with the conviction and the firm belief that you show them if they do that they will fail. The rest, let's fail together. Let's co-create something. You know, what is the worst? What is the worst that can happen? Nothing. At least you either, you know, stay in the status quo or you are betting in something that may work.
Right.
So yeah, for me
I want
this.
to pick up from that because because the world is moving so fast. The ability to fail and to fail well is becoming more and more important than ever before. So you know, you might have seen things on the iterative design process. So a good design process never gets it perfect the first round.
That's right.
And CEOs need to learn. I had a meeting in China with a bunch of CEOs. And I asked them, what is one of the core leadership skills that you've developed as a global leader? And I was really surprised. Several said, one thing we had to learn was to be forgiving and forgivable. I said, what do you mean? Sounds really fluffy. And they said, no, the world is moving so fast. We have so many things that are on our radar. If we make a mistake, we have to forgive, learn, and move on. And they also said, we can't fret over mistakes that we've made. We just have to use them as a stepping stone into the future. And I thought that was so refreshing to hear that from a bunch of CEOs. So being able to learn very fast and creating an environment where mistakes are, if they're safe, they're okay to make because they're stepping stones into the future.
Well, the fear is the ready, fire, aim, right? Is we're going to get it wrong because we're going to shoot before we know what we're shooting at. When actually the world is, the way that it really operates in the iterative approach is it's ready, accelerate, steer, right? So you have to put your foot on the gas and then, you know, get your focus to where you're going. But you have to already be moving. You have to be executing at the time when you're steering. For me, I think dealing with challenges, especially now, has everything to do with who's around you. Nobody's omni-gifted, right? Nobody's omni-talented. There's no CEO out there that can perfectly lead any organization anywhere in the world.
Leadership has become a team sport.
That's exactly right.
If they haven't discovered it yet, it really is a team sport.
I'm a big fan of Gallup and Clifton Strengths. I love strengths-based coaching. I love strengths-based leadership. Look that up. If you haven't looked that up, go and get your strengths-based assessment done. But figuring out what you're really good at, and then surrounding yourself with people who are really good at what you're not good at. So making sure that you're leading through community rather than just from your chair at your big man desk, right? You know what I mean?
Totally agree.
So that kind of autocracy is never going to play out anymore in the world. There's just too much complexity. So no single leader, no CEO can ever fully get it right unless they're in community and they're intentionally in community with people that are different than them, and who are really good at the things that they're really bad at.
And on top of that, when you have that type of leadership,
Yeah.
by and large, millennials across the world actually rally towards that type of leadership.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you want to retain millennials in your company, pursue diversity, and pursue your weaknesses in the strengths of others.
And you know, it's just maths. There is always more skills,
Yeah.
more genius, more idea, more innovative, etc., and more potential outside the organization that
Yeah.
we may have
Yeah.
in our company in the UAE, in
Yeah.
any company for that matter, but obviously in the UAE. So yes, the CEO opening himself to the outside world, getting closer to industry leaders in his industry and in adjacent one,
Yeah.
getting closer to innovators and startup and entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
getting closer, you know, to people, as you said, who can complement their vision of the world.
Yeah.
This is, you know,
Yeah.
the competition of tomorrow will happen at an ecosystem level. It's
There's a
not anymore, you know, at a company level. Yeah, please go.
I think there's also another conversation that needs to happen before that.
Yeah.
And I've had the privilege of taking people through that many times, because if you have an intercultural team, it can be pretty scary to admit your weaknesses.
Yeah, sure.
So you're talking about strengths finders,
Yeah.
but strengths finders has a flip side. Once I find my strengths, I also find what I'm not good at.
Yeah, that's right.
So the dilemma is, on our leadership team, is it safe
Right.
to have a conversation around that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I really want to encourage CEOs to create that environment, because only then will you say, how do we create a team where we prop each other up,
Yeah.
where we become each other's strength?
Yeah.
And that is both a beautiful process, but it's also culturally a process that you need to learn to navigate as a leader.
Right. Well, we're going to save that topic for another podcast, because that's a huge conversation. I definitely want to come back to that. Make sure that we come back to that. We talk about trust building and transparency and safety on teams in order to navigate not only the complexities of the world, but the diversity and complexity on the team. So yeah, we definitely need to have that conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been an amazing conversation. I trust that you found some value in this and a couple of tips and tricks as CEOs for how you can better your own performance. And I hope that you're able to pursue meaningful management in your career and in your company. Thank you for joining.